Hello, everyone. This is Ken. We're with Jack of the Cape Party in South Africa. Jack, how you doing?
I'm very well, thanks, Ken. How are you?
Well, doing super. Nice and sunny in Indiana. A little bit cool for my taste, but we'll take it because winter is over. Well, tell us real quick about who you are and your organization, how people can reach you.
My name's Jack Miller. I founded the Cape Party in 2007 out of a complete and utter disillusionment with the direction that South Africa was going. Basically, what we stand for is greater political and economic autonomy for the Western Cape region, as well as surrounding areas which we call the Greater Cape or the Cape of Good Hope. If the ANC, which is the ruling government of the time, if they will not negotiate with us on that basis, we are going to call for a referendum. And if we get a majority in that referendum within the Western Cape, we are going to declare the Cape an independent country.
Okay, so what happens then? You create an independent country, and is anybody going to pay any attention? Is anyone going to recognize you as a legitimate country?
Well, we certainly hope so. I mean, if you look around the world, it's happening all over the place. And you look at England now with Brexit. Britain was part of what they call the European Union. In 1910, the Cape was forced by a ruling of the British Parliament to join the Union of South Africa. So fundamentally, there's no difference to the European Union and the Union of South Africa, which took independent entities and forced us together to suit the whims and the needs of a colonial power, which was the British Empire at the time. We've now been under this horrific colonial mistake for over 100 years. From 1910 to 1948, we were under British rule. From 1948 to 1994, we were under Nat apartheid rule. And from 1994 to now, we've been under the ANC regime. Every single one of those governments used those central levers of power here in South Africa to their own benefit and to the detriment of others. What we're saying is that this colonial mistake has got to finally come to an end. So where we're advocating for more independence or outright independence for the Cape, equally so, I would advocate independence for KwaZulu-Natal, for the Zulu people, for the Eastern Cape. We were contacted a few years ago by the Abatembu tribe, which is one of the the leading Xhosa tribes in the Eastern Cape. They're calling for independence of their region, and we fully support them in that. So basically what we're trying to say is that it's time to put an end to the centralized political systems that just have failed the world over. The European Union is another example that's tearing up the seams.
Okay. Now, a lot of people who are listening, when you talk about the Cape, they're not terribly familiar with South Africa. They know South Africa is in South Africa, and that's pretty much the end of it. They know that there's a black majority, that apartheid is over. They know who Nelson Mandela is, but you start talking about the Cape region, they're not familiar with that. So just kind of giving them some direction
Sure.
geographically. Then we might talk a little bit more about the political aspect, but just geographically, where is it?
Okay, well, yeah, I like the way that you started that, South Africa. And I mean, I don't blame people for, I mean, yeah, not really knowing exactly. Well, no, they should know where we are. But the thing is, if you look at the name South Africa, it's not really even the name of a country. It's a geographical location. We're on a continent, which is Africa. Where are we? We're down the bottom in the south. So when the British Empire, forced this upon us, they weren't very ingenuitive in the way that they put this together. They put territories which have nothing in common. In fact, warring nations for centuries under one political system which has failed. So where is the Cape? The Cape is the southernmost western part of South Africa. So for anyone who's ever been to South Africa or knows of the African continent, we're down at the bottom, right at the foot. We were one of the first trade routes. The Dutch East India Company settled here in 1652. In 1488, the Portuguese navigator Bartholomew Dias chartered the Cape region. So we've got a history going back many, many centuries. And we were a point at which the umbilical cords of trade between the East and the West were tied here in our harbors.
Okay, while you were talking, I was Googling the Cape so the folks at home could see the image on the map, and it took me to New Jersey, so not even Google likes you people. but we've got it now, so they can see exactly where it is. Okay, so tell us a little bit about the geography, not the geography, but the demographics of where you are. Is this mostly is this a white-dominated area? If you become an independent nation, which I think is your objective, right? Is it going to be a white country? What's that all about?
No, no. In fact, we're trying to put an end to the types of racially inflammatory policies that South Africa has suffered under for the last 100 years. And if you look at the Cape region, we are the most demographically diverse.
Oh, okay.
50% of our population is classified as, well, self-classified as a term colored. I know that overseas that word is considered to be offensive, but here in the Cape, it's a term that members of the mixed race community do refer to themselves as. So that's 50%. 20% of the Cape broadly is white, and 30% is black. So that's your essential breakdown. This is fundamentally different to the rest of South Africa, which has on average an 80% black population and 9% white, 9% colored, and about 2% Indian and Asian. So demographically, we're fundamentally different to the rest of South Africa, and for good reason, because we've been one of the most open-minded regions in South Africa since 1652, and just the fact that the majority of our population belongs to mixed heritage shows that we do not conscribe to the types of policies which were oppressive under apartheid and are now oppressive under the ANC regime. It's time to put an end to this.
Okay, so tell me again what percentage? Again, while you're talking, I'm googling, and folks can see what I'm doing on the screen here. What percentage is white in that area?
Approximately 20%.
Okay, about 20%. There it is, demographics. Okay, so this is not a white movement. This is an independence movement. So when I started talking to you, the first thought that came to my mind, Jack, is I know what's going to happen. They're going to say this is a bunch of white people trying to break off, and they're going to let them have it. This is no way going to work. But that's not the case at all. I just totally misread this from the very onset. So this is really, what, political and social. It's got nothing to do with race whatsoever.
This is exactly, Ken. It's political and it's economic. And this is what irritates us so much, is that the ANC wants to make this about race. And if you look at our manifesto, you look at everything that we stand for, we simply believe in good economic and good political policies. We believe in the merits of individuals, regardless of their skin color. Let's put in good economic and political policies that make countries work. And one of my favorite examples is Singapore, which also, just like here in South Africa, used to suffer under colonialism. And in the 60s, after they gained independence, they went from a muddied island with virtually zero resources to one of the highest income per capita countries in the world today. And they also had a varied population, Indian, Asian, they had Muslim, Christian, British influence there. And they managed to navigate that terrain simply by implementing good political and economic policies. So they're a shining example of what the Cape Republic could be, where we put race behind us and simply focus on the good political and economic policy. But the ANC will not let us have that discussion. And exactly like you say, they want to say, oh, no, these guys are racist. And it's a very simple way of shutting down conversation, taking away the merits of the argument, and tarring and feathering whoever it is you don't want your audience to listen to.
And it's effective. It works. It's amazing. All they got to do is say, you're racist, and everybody shuts up because nobody wants to be called a racist. We're actually streaming, by the way. We don't have a lot of people watching, but I thought while we're doing this, I'll go ahead and stream. And we will post this a little bit later, but it says some guy named Paul wants to know, well, it's not really a question, he's making an observation, which I thought was kind of interesting. He said, I nearly got mugged in Cape Town during the Rugby World Cup. Well, that kind of prompts a question. What's the crime level like? Are you guys going to be better off if, considering what would you call it, the crime climate in that area if you get rid of the rest of the country?
Yeah.
I may not have phrased that very well, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I know, absolutely. I definitely know what you mean. 100%. Crime is out of control in this country. And, for a number of reasons. Education is collapsing. Infrastructure is collapsing. And, the police force and the resources required to have good investigatory officers, to have the facilities to investigate crimes and to put criminals behind bars. All of these things are absolutely crumbling. So, crime is just one aspect of the failed state that is South Africa. So as soon as you start putting better economic and political policies in place, we're certainly going to see crime come down. And it's one of the areas that we want to put a specific focus on. Personally, I'm in favor of the harshest penalties for the harshest crimes. I would like to see the death penalty returned. However, we would model the Cape Republic on a system called direct democracy, in which referendums, initiatives, recall, and nullification are the primary ways in which the people themselves control the governments that are there to serve them. And so I would have a referendum to see if the majority of people in the Cape would be in favor of the death penalty. But measures like that need to be taken to put some of these criminals, to bring the criminal system in line.
Typically what happens that I have seen when anybody establishes a prosperous government of any kind, jurisdiction, you get swamped with okay, call them migrants, refugees, whatever you want to call them. I call them invaders. But let's say that you're successful and you have a booming economy, but you were surrounded by sub-Saharan Africans who want to come in and partake. You're going to have some kind of a plan in place to keep yourself from being overwhelmed. The reason I ask that, I'm thinking the first thing that's going to happen is the ANC is just going to swamp in and take over. I mean, just send people in. So,
okay, well, first of all, like I mentioned earlier, I don't just only believe in Cape independence. And I think that if we take ourselves to that place in the future, if the Cape was to become independent, there are other areas in South Africa where tribal groups are very much in favor of their own independence. I think if we were to go free, you would see a very strong secession movement in KwaZulu-Natal. You would see a very strong secession movement in the Eastern Cape. And in fact, you look at Lesotho and Swaziland, their name implies the tribes that are the majority there. The Sothos are the majority in Lesotho, the Swazis are the majority in Swaziland. And I think a lot of these areas would return to their tribal entities, and where essentially their own people who speak a majority home language that they share their cultural identity, share their cultural values, would naturally gravitate towards that type of situation. So I don't think we would see people across our borders necessarily flooding in, because people naturally want to pursue their own
destiny.
Yeah, well-being within people that share their values. And so that's why I don't think there would be a stronger force as would be thought. However, the other thing is that if there would be that force, we intend on having border security, border controls, and the types of policies that we have in place right now, where we have migrants flooding in from all over Africa into South Africa. We've got completely porous borders, and the government does nothing to secure them. In fact, these people often get refugee status. They get free handouts because of the completely oppressive taxation system that the ANC imposes on us here. And so these people are getting free houses, free electricity, free water, are then turned into ANC voters. And so this type of system will come to an end in a Cape Republic. Taxes and resources will be spent on our own people. As I mentioned earlier, the majority population, the colored population, over 50%, they've been on the housing list for up to 40 years, some people we've spoken to. And they've got people who are coming in from other parts of Africa simply because they are black, getting houses over and above our local communities, purely on skin color. And so this has to come to an end. So in the Cape Republic, it's going to be first come, first serve. Our resources, our taxes go to our people. You're not going to just come in here and get a job. Jobs are going to be secured for our own citizens. Our borders are going to be secure. And with by allowing communities to pursue their own self-interest across our borders in the Eastern Cape and KwaZulu-Natal, I don't think they'd want to they'd have any reason to come across the border to us anyway.
Okay, so the B laws will be gone. By the way, what are you going to call your country? Is it going to be called the Cape or what?
Yeah, the Cape Republic. I think that's the first
Republic.
name that comes to people's minds when they think of us as independent. Historically, the Cape of Good Hope is a term that's been used before, which I think is quite beautiful. But on that, we can have a referendum too. Ask the people of the Cape, what do you want the name of your country to be?
Okay, makes perfect sense. But for now, we just call it the Cape. Is that it?
The Cape Republic.
The Cape Republic. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking that currently one of the great burdens in South Africa are the B laws. Where it's like what we would call affirmative action only on steroids, which is really just discrimination. So I'm assuming, obviously, that's not going to exist in the Cape Republic. That'll be gone.
Absolutely.
But the thing that still troubles my mind, Jack, is that I don't think the ANC and the powers that be behind the throne, the Zumas and I forget the guy who was behind the BEE, but they're not going to just sit back and let this happen. So are you prepared to deal with these effectively, these outside forces that want to not let you? And I'm assuming that Cape Town is a substantial part of the economic infrastructure of South Africa as a whole. They're not going to sit back and say, okay, go if you want to go.
Well, when you look around the world, it's very easy to say that now, and this is what all central governments will tell you. They'll say, don't you dare do it, we're not going to allow you to leave, and we're going to raise absolute hell to make sure that you don't get your freedom. But when it comes down to reality, if we can take ourselves out of our positions right now and move forward 5 years, 10 years, whatever it might be, when we get to the point where the majority, 51% of people living here in the Cape, put their X next to a piece of paper in the ballot booth that says, we want our country back. We want to make the Cape an independent country. You then have a central government come down and say, no, we're not going to allow you to do that. First of all, I don't think that's going to fly in the international community's eyes. That's not going to fly with us down here in the Cape. Whether you want to accept it or not, we are living in a democracy. And if the central government shows themselves to be undemocratic, to use undemocratic means, to not listen to the will of the people, then I think you're going to have a lot of angry people. And I don't think that can stop us.
Yeah, so the point is you've put a lot of forethought into this. You're anticipating and you're ready to respond accordingly. So, yeah, it could happen, but you guys are ready to deal with it when it happens, if it happens. My thought is that if South Africa continues going the way it's going to implode anyhow.
Yeah.
And you're like posturing yourselves for the inevitable. Hopefully you'll get it done before the inevitable happens.
Yes.
But what are your thoughts on that? Do you think South Africa, if it keeps going the way it's going, what's going to happen to this country?
That's a very good point, Ken. Yeah. A lot of people, they don't seem to have the foresight to see. You just simply look at what's happening in the country. We just got downgraded last week to junk status. I don't know if you might be aware of that. Our education system has never been as appalling as what it is right now. Crime is out of control. Infrastructure is falling to pieces. It's just, and it's not just a white-colored Cape issue. It's across the board. You've got riots amongst black communities all over the country. There's a group called the EFF, which is taking advantage of this anger against the central government. And unfortunately, they take a very extreme position where they blame everything on whites, everything on apartheid, instead of blaming the failings of their own government. And they're promoting some very violent language.
Yeah,
So yeah, if you
what is that guy's name that heads up the
Juice,
EFF? I forgot.
Juice Malema,
Oh yeah, okay. He's a
Julius Malema of the
jackass.
EFF.
He's a racist if ever I saw one. My goodness.
Wow, these people are so racist. This is what's so ridiculous about it is they will try and say that the Cape Party is a racist party because we want devolution of power, and because we call them racist. You know, it's if you look at the premises of their argument, it's absolute insanity. It's as if they not look in the mirror and see how racist they're being. It's mind blowing.
Well,
Anyway,
yeah, they
yeah.
can, but you know, the thing that Karl Marx taught his people was accuse others of doing what you do. So
Yeah.
they know they're racist, but you know, they've also learned that the way that you escape that stigma is you superimpose it on somebody else. It's just classic projection. So I think that's what's going on. They know they're racist and they're happy to be racist, but they're not going to live with the stigma. They're going to project it onto you. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. And this is what all their policies are about. Black economic empowerment, affirmative action, the Employment Equity Act, which, if enforced, would drive 1 million of our population here in the Cape into poverty. These laws are absolutely ridiculous.
I tried to access their website, but it crashed. So maybe that's a EFF.
It's like everything in this country, yeah.
Yeah, it's a harbinger, I think, of things to come. All right, so we've got the Cape Party. Tell us a little bit about the infrastructure of your party, however much you can tell. I don't know how much you want to keep confidential, but how's your party organized? Have you done any polling? How many members do you have? That type of thing.
Yeah, we have done polling. I just want to bring your previous question back to what I'm going to answer right now is, you know, saying yes, that people, they've got a difficulty in placing themselves in the future. And if you look at all the markers, what's happening in this country, it's inevitable that we're heading towards a very serious situation. And I would really implore the ANC government to do some self-reflection and say, come on, let's sit down at the table here. Let's have a discussion man to man. Let's not let this get out of control, because you know where things are going right now. It's not going to end well. And there's no reason why we can't settle this civilly. But yes, we are well positioned. If you look at what's happening around the country, as I said before, not just whites and colors, but black communities across the country are disillusioned by their own government. And I think we're going to see some serious unrest coming in the next few years. So we would like to do it democratically and peacefully. That's what we are. We're a democratic, peaceful political organization. But we would like the country not to burn down before we can at least win Cape independence through a peaceful election.
Okay, the important thing is that Jacob Zuma has his fortune. I don't think anything else matters. I'm thinking top down, the way they look at it. Him and his cronies are taken care of. They could care less what happens to South Africa.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the unfortunate truth.
Yep.
That's the unfortunate truth. Yeah, and this is exactly what Robert Mugabe did, and I wish that the majority of people out there would smarten up to this. Where you see that Mugabe's policies began to fail, that's when he became more and more racist against the white population there, and started to blame everything, scapegoating everything on the white population. And we're seeing this now. You know, from 1994, we had some good years of growth. And then as things began to deteriorate midway through Mbeki's term, you know, we're full steam plummeting now under Zuma. You're starting to see the same type of rhetoric come through, where they're blaming every single one of today's failings on white people or history. And if we look at Singapore, this is the biggest load of rubbish. This is a country that suffered under the same type of colonialism, same oppressive forces, and they've made massive successes of themselves. So people need to wake up and not buy these arguments and hold their governments accountable. But yeah, like you said, they're just there for their self-interest. They don't care.
Yeah, but as we all know, they're not going to do that. They're not going to look at Singapore and say, you know, look how they did it. Let's do it, because that would mean they have to admit their own failure or whatever.
Yes.
That wouldn't happen in 1,000 years. Have you done? I'm kind of wondering if you have put together any kind of forethought as to the type of government you guys plan to install. You going to have a parliamentary government, or is that yet to be determined, plebiscite, or how are you going to figure that out?
No, that's the most beautiful part of this whole vision. I mean, there's a lot of countries out there that are pushing for independence, but I don't know if they've really got, the ideal answer once they get there. For us, the vision really is that outcome. And I would implore countries around the world to move in the type of direction that we want to move to. We don't want to look at politics and economics as left or right, but rather as right or wrong. And if you take the world as a laboratory for countries that succeed and fail, which ones are shining examples of what works? And economically, it's impossible to overlook Singapore and Hong Kong, and politically, it's impossible to overlook Switzerland. So we envision a hybrid system here in the Cape Republic of the direct democracy of Switzerland and the economic freedoms of Singapore and Hong Kong. Now, the political system that Switzerland has is first of all, people think that Switzerland is a country. It's actually not. It's 26 almost semi-independent countries, 26 cantons. Each canton has got unbelievable veto voting rights over the types of policies that they live under. So each canton will decide its own tax system. They'll decide much of their laws, and they hold the federal government accountable for their actions. So we would want a similar system here in the Cape Republic, where each canton or province would be largely responsible for the types of policies that they have. Here in the Cape, being so ethnically diverse, I belong to the white English-speaking population. But the vast majority of the Cape is Afrikaans speaking, brown Afrikaans speakers, white Afrikaans speakers. We've got Muslim population. We've got very strong Christian population. We've got Hindu Indians. And so we've got a vast range of different cultures here in the Cape. And the last thing you want to do is impose a one-size-fits-all policy down people's throats. And I think this is where Singapore managed so well to deal with the conflict between Muslims and Christians there. And we would want to just devolve power down to local communities. And that way you don't have any big boss imposing their will on anyone else. It's live and let live.
Okay, so you would, politically, you would divide the Cape Republic into provinces or states. What do you call them? How many would there be? Are they already in place? Is that going to be something new?
Yes, it's approximately, I think it's 63, 60 contiguous municipalities that make up what would be the Cape Republic.
Okay, so that whole political angle from how that's going to be put into place has already been thought through. That's good to go. Okay, I'm still wondering, by the way, that was the original idea of the United States. You have these independent colonies that are going to be their own states, and they're going to cooperate as the United States. But at some point in time, they stopped referring to the United States, saying the United States are, to saying the United States is. At some point, we stopped being a plurality and became a singularity. I don't know when that happened, but it seems like every generation we lose more sovereignty in our state. So, but I know where you're coming from. Okay, tell us a little bit about the party specifically. Who belongs to this? Do you have like 10 members, 1,000 members? What is the composition?
We've got about 10,000 members across the whole country.
Okay.
We've got branches throughout the Cape. Just this last election, we expanded into areas that we hadn't expected to before, all the way up to Bloemfontein. So no, we're expanding rapidly, and yeah, like our vision, it's a grassroots revolution, and we believe that that governance should be by the people, and so we have a system whereby branches take responsibility for their local areas and local communities. And it's their responsibility to do fundraising and to sort of spread the message. We at headquarters We basically we steer the direction of the party, make sure that that everyone is aware of the vision and the policies, and I think because it's such a beautiful message that and it's not one of the it's so new, you know, it's a type of political system that it might be government 2.0. This is where the world needs to be moving, and and when you give responsibility to people, there's much more engagement and there's much more excitement. People want to get involved. It's not as if we're a political party that dictates, that this is how it's going to be. You know, much of our policies we want to implement through referendum. So this is very much a grassroots democracy, grassroots revolution.
Somebody in the chat room wants to know if there is a problem of a schism or a division between the English and the Afrikaans-speaking people in the New Cape.
I'll answer that now. Have you got me clear? I just feel like our connection got a little bit loose there. Are you hearing me clearly?
Yeah, I hear you clearly. There's a little bit of reverberation bouncing back and forth, but yeah, we can hear you.
Okay.
That's part of the internet, unfortunately.
Yes, that's a very interesting question, and I'm especially sensitive to this. I think that it's horrific what happened to the Afrikaans people prior to 1910. From 1880 to 1902, the British Empire embarked on what's considered to be one of the first, well, the Boer Wars, but one of the first concentration camps that we've seen in recent history, where they put Afrikaans families, they captured them and put them in the most unacceptable conditions. They essentially didn't defeat the Boers through fair warfare. It was basically very underhanded, and they weakened the Boers to the point at which they could impose their colonial rule in 1910, and that is how South Africa was founded. The Union of South Africa in 1910 was forced upon us by the British, by British politicians who voted in British Parliament on how we should live our lives down here in the Cape of Good Hope. So the Afrikaners are very aware of that history, but I'm not, my history is not English. Although I'm first language English speaking, I've actually got Mayflower heritage on my father's side, but so that's how I got around to the English language. But the Afrikaans people are sensitive to the types. They know their history, and I think that what we need to do is finally put an end to the types of conflicts that we're seeing between black, white, historically between perhaps English and Afrikaans. We need to forge a new country in which we value each other on merit. And I would say that today that Afrikaners and English speakers do get on perfectly well. Obviously, there are slight differences in culture, but I think moving forward, they're minor, and together we can make a fantastic nation.
Yeah, occasionally I will see something on the internet where somebody from the Afrikaans community will explain their history and their frustration with what they had to endure. But by and large, I don't see any serious schism at all between those two communities. So
no, and also I want to add into that, like the term Afrikaans is often referred to as just white Afrikaners, but the largest Afrikaans speaking population here in the Cape are actually mixed race or colored, brown. They call themselves bruin boere, bruin Afrikaners, you know. So I would rather say that the language Afrikaans is one of the most binding cultural factors of us here in the Cape.
Yeah, language does it. That just raises an interesting question, which really not related. But I've heard several theories of where the colored people came from. So where did they come from? Some people say they're half black, half white, or mixed half black and white. Some people say they're Indian heritage. So where did they come from?
Yeah, that's That's a great question. I think it was best answered by a professor here in the Cape. He's a colored professor. His name is Professor van der Ross. And as a colored person, he said, we need to stop looking at ourselves as either being Khoisan or either being Dutch or this or that. We are our own people. We have our own identity. We are something new. And so the colored people are what they are as they stand here today. Now, if we look at the roots of what the colored identity is, you've got essentially with the Bantu migrations coming down from Central Africa, the Khoisan, the nomadic Khoisan people, they basically predominated through the whole of Southern Africa. But with the Bantu migration, they were forced further and further southwards. And it was at the point where the Afrikaners, the Boers who were moving inland, where they first made contact at the Fish River with the southerly expanding Xhosa, at which those were the borders that then began what we today call the Cape. And the colored population, first of all, the majority speak Afrikaans. Their ancestry goes back to Khoisan, to Dutch, to French Huguenot, to the various Malaysian, Indonesian slaves that came over. So you've got a real unique mix of people that make up what today is something that has its own identity.
Okay. I'm wondering now if once the Cape Republic comes into existence and it begins to prosper, this kind of touches on what I asked earlier about refugees and migrants. But I'm also thinking that people in the Pretoria, Johannesburg area, where my understanding is that's where the white population is concentrated, those white people from Afrikaans heritage and English heritage are going to say, let's move to Cape Town. I mean, if I lived up there and my country was imploding around me and you guys had something good going on, that would be my thought. I want to move to, and we touched on this a little bit before, I know, but I would say I want to move to the Cape Republic. So are you going to accept that massive influx? Because these tend to be extraordinarily talented people. I mean, they're intelligent, they're productive, they know how to farm, they know how to build industries. So are you going to open up to them, or is it they're going to be just like everybody else?
No, they're absolutely welcome. They're absolutely welcome. And you know, we're going to govern the Cape Republic in the same way that any other country is governed. It'll be a meritocracy. So if you have skills that we consider to be valuable here in the Cape, you'll apply for citizenship, and certainly people who are from South Africa will get first preference to other countries around the world. But yeah, we're gonna run our immigration system the same way that Australia does, the same way that any other country does.
Yeah, I hope you do better than Australia. Australia probably has one of the better immigration policies in the world, but or of the Western world, but still, they're having some serious problems there. What kind of blowback are you guys getting from ANC right now? Do they consider you a serious threat? Are they saying, this is just this tiny little party? By the way, 10,000, I'm thinking that's huge. That's far bigger than I thought it was. But are they taking you guys seriously, or are they just thinking you're going to dry up and blow away? How are they approaching you?
Yeah, it's funny. It seems like everyone within politics and government takes us very seriously, but unfortunately, you know, we've got a media here that's unbelievably biased, and it's very difficult to get a fair hearing. And unfortunately, you know, the electorate, they buy into the mainstream propaganda, and you know, it's been tough to get a fair hearing. But if our discussions with the ANC, with the DA, with other political parties, they're very aware of how serious our message is and what we're bringing to the table.
You know, I would think that the DA would be what's the word I'm looking for? Would be more accepting to what you guys are doing, almost supportive of what you're doing. But they're
Yes,
not.
I used to be a DA supporter myself back in the day, back when I was young and foolish. But they're a different DA now. I mean, I supported the DA under someone who, by the name of Tony Leon, and his policies were much more decentralized. They were anti-black economic empowerment and a lot of these discriminatory policies that we're seeing. The new DA is fundamentally different, and the unfortunate thing is I don't think voters have quite woken up to this fact. I don't know how long it's going to take for voters to realize that the new DA is frankly no different in policy to the ANC and the EFF. They're in favor of black economic empowerment. They're in favor of affirmative action. They're in favor of land seizures. I mean, do you get anything more communist than that? Land seizures, and they support this. So, this is why the DA would not make good partners with ourselves, because they are fundamentally opposed to what we stand for. They see themselves as a national party. They see themselves as a party that their message is no different to the communist agenda of the ANC and the EFF. And so, unfortunately, my answer to that is no. The DA is not interested in what we stand for.
So they're in no way sympathetic.
I hope the people of the Cape wake up and realize that the DA is now a wolf in sheep's clothing, and their agenda is no different to the status quo that we're currently living under.
All right, so the DA should no longer be considered the opposition to the ANC, but it's kind of like an ANC light or clone, yes. Just a different name, but the agenda is basically the same. So that positions your party as being the true opposition, at least in that region. Do I have that right?
It positions our party as being, sorry?
As the primary opposition to the ANC, the alternative.
Certainly. I mean, if you look at our position, our policy position on everything, no one, I think, can take a stronger position as we do. Everyone's trying to jump on the gravy train and copy the ANC agenda, because essentially, if you're going to be a national party, 80% is black, and the ANC is playing to this vast majority by basically saying we're going to steal everything that's not nailed down and we're going to give it to you for free. And this is how they win elections. So now you've got the DA and the EFF and these other parties seeing the success that the ANC has had with this communist agenda. And so they, you now have the DA replicating these policies in order for them to get national power. It's as if they've lost complete sight of the reason one would be any opposition to the ANC. And so you're dead right. The Cape Party is pretty much the only party with policies that can defend the Cape people, because everyone else is after the loot and the feeding trough up in Pretoria, whereas we here down in the Cape are looking after our own best interests.
So the driving force behind the DA is not principle any longer. It's just power, control, competition for the sake of competition, if I understand you correctly. Do you guys, do you say you guys in South Africa, by the way?
Sorry, do we say what in South Africa?
You guys. Is that a South African term, you guys? Apparently not. But anyhow,
sorry, I lost you there, Ken.
Okay, I'm asking about the term "you guys." Do you say that in South Africa?
Yes, we do.
Oh,
I do.
You know, in Australia they say "mate," in Britain they say "bloke," in America they say "you guys." I'm saying you guys. Does that make sense to him? Do you have anybody in office? What kind of success have you had at the polls?
Unfortunately, no. But that's a very tricky question. We actually have a court case running at the moment against the Independent Electoral Commission. They are the commission that's supposed to oversee elections here in South Africa and make sure that they are free and fair. One of the leaders of one of the political parties, Mangosuthu Buthelezi, actually said last week that he doesn't think there's been a single free and fair election in South Africa since '94. So, that's something we're thinking about. Our personal experience has been that in 2011, in the municipal elections, first of all, we only contest in the Western Cape region, obviously, because this is, this is our territory. In the municipal elections in Cape Town in 2011, we only had the resources to demand recounts in 5 of the over 1,000 voting stations. It's an unbelievably costly affair. This is another thing that we realized, being a grassroots party, being up against parties like the DA and the ANC, which just have millions upon billions to spend. And we're essentially just doing this by word of mouth and people handing out flyers. So nonetheless, we could only afford to do recounts in 5 of these voting stations. In every single one of those voting stations, our votes increased, and in some cases more than doubled. So, we then complained to the IEC and said, listen, 100% of the voting stations where we demanded recounts, our votes almost doubled. Now, there's got to be something wrong here. Now, the IEC law is that you need to lodge your complaint within 48 hours before or after the election ends. Now, I don't know if anyone who's ever been involved in an election, 48 hours, you're not getting sleep. The election day ends. You're going straight through that night. The next day, votes are coming in. You're sorting out problems. It's usually election on a Wednesday. So Friday, you wake up. You only then begin to identify that there might be a problem. And you've got until 5 o'clock that day to submit court papers to say that there's been an issue. So anyway, 2011, they time barred us, so we couldn't follow up on why our votes doubled in places where we had recounts, and we wanted to have recounts in other areas, and we narrowly missed out on getting a seat in that election. The same thing happened last year in the 2016 municipal elections. And we currently, because we knew their sneaky trick of barring you in 48 hours, we had our lawyers ready. So the same thing happened. We on our Facebook page, we said, anyone who's aware of voting irregularities, please, contact us at head office. And so they went online and they found there were certain voting stations in which the Cape Party got 0 votes, yet we had families coming forward saying, me, my wife, my family, we voted. That's like 5 votes that you definitely got. Yet the IEC said that we got 0 votes in that voting station. So fortunately, we had enough people coming to us by Friday to put together court documents, which we filed to the IEC. And we won our appeal. It then went to court. We won the court case. The IEC then stonewalled it and said, no, they're now taking it to the High Court. We're now at the highest possible court that they can go to prevent a recount. And apparently the judge is only going to hear our case in the 3rd or 4th quarter of this year. So they're using delaying tactics. But if you look at what's happening, I don't know. Maybe we should have seats in Parliament there, Ken, but they just robbed us. I don't know. We've narrowly missed out on a few elections, and each case there's been some serious voting irregularities. So who knows?
Yeah, my experience with third parties is that sometimes the greatest impact is not necessarily getting elected, but it's the actual participation and having a voice that's being heard. Do you guys, does the media allow you to participate in debates? I'm assuming there's televised debates. Do you participate in that? Debates on the radio, however they do it in South Africa? Or have you been locked out of that avenue as well?
Well, during election time, it's easier because there are laws in place that we can hold them accountable for, in which every single contesting political party needs to have a certain amount of airtime. So we use those laws to our advantage. But to be honest, outside of election time, the media they are absolute puppets of the status quo. You never get a condescending voice. They're so concerned about keeping their jobs. I don't think very highly of the journalists we have in this country.
Okay, so you can participate in debates, but outside of that, you're not getting a whole lot of media coverage. What kind of media outreach do you have other than your website, or is that it?
Yeah. I think we're entering into a new era in the world where you look at Trump's victory in America, where he had the mainstream media completely against him, and it seems like Twitter was his primary weapon, and he's still using it today. So you know, you look at Brexit, the British there, they had you had Barack Obama flying over there to tell them you better not go independent, otherwise you're going to be in the back of the queue. And so, generally, all around the world, your status quo systems are so heavily loaded against often political entities and groups that are trying to stand up for your standard uh, middle class person. And fortunately, with the internet today, we have means of circumventing them. So to answer your question, yeah, our website, our Facebook presence, our grassroots community work. That's pretty much how we go about our business.
Okay. While you're speaking there, we went back and accessed your website, and I see you've got a Facebook page and a Twitter page. So you are getting around the media to some degree, which is always a problem
Yeah.
because they hold a monopoly on that. Um, I was just going to click on your Facebook page, see if I get it open here. Oh, there we go. So it looks to me like you do have a presence here. People are weighing in and expressing yourself, and I don't know who that big fat person is you got on your Facebook page, but you probably haven't even seen it. I don't know. Okay, I'm just
Yeah,
scrolling. Do
we've got
what?
a court case. We've got a court case tomorrow morning against the South African National Art Gallery, and the individual I assume that you're referring to there is the author of the supposed artwork, which is a big poster that has black and white text in capitals, in bold, that says "fuck." Oh, sorry, am I allowed to swear on this
No,
program?
you have to say the F word.
Okay, sorry.
Too
If
late
it
now. You
says,
already said it. we got,
can we go back and beep that out? Anyway,
no, you're
if it
good.
says if white people repeat it over and over and over again, it is the definition of what our laws consider as hate speech. Yet here you have a an institution that is funded by the government, i.e., our taxes, taxpayers' money, is going towards the exhibits that the directors of this gallery decide and put on public show to everyone. And they've decided to put this piece of political propaganda, which is just outright hate speech, that says "F white people." And then when you look at the little write-up that she has next to it, it's an explanation as to why white people are so bad, and that all white people are racist. And it's this. I'll go back. There's a circular argument that they have, which is ridiculous. But anyway, so there's a website there that's fwhitepeople.org, and it tells people to go there, and it's just an absolute racial tirade against every white in existence. And then you look at the arguments that you see. The problem is this agenda is connected to a lot of seriously inflammatory stuff that's happening in South Africa. There's another slogan called "Shoot the Boer."
Yeah.
That has, I mean, that is really, really horrific. I don't know how much your audience is aware of farm murders that are taking place in this country. But, Thabo Mbeki, he removed a group called the Commandos, which was essentially security for the farm areas. And ever since that happened, the murder of white, specifically Afrikaans farmers, is just horrific. There's a group called Genocide Watch that that goes through the numbers around the world, and I think we're at a level 6 or something as far as degrees of heading towards complete genocide. So anyway, there are slogans that these militant groups, that Julius Malema, the EFF, obviously the ANC de facto through like this South African National Art Gallery, these protests that we've seen throughout the universities, which started off as fees must fall, They made it about reducing fees. Then it changed to, there's some quite funny videos in this, science must fall. Your audience might actually want to YouTube science must fall and listen to some of the absolutely absurd arguments that that some of these people make. It then changed to roads must fall, and then became whites must fall. So it rapidly transformed into this completely racist agenda. And similarly, where they had these fees must fall and whites must fall movements, you had these groups spray painting on the walls of the universities, F white people. And so this poster is basically providing a philosophical background to the ideology of what supposedly F white people means. And he calls the Cape Party racist because we take offense to this poster. So basically they say, if you're a white person and you take offense to people being racist towards you, you're racist. Then a black journalist was writing about the author, that he finds the author of this poster racist also, because simply by having white skin, by not being offended by racism against white people, but in this case by promoting racism against white people, which this white lady does, you are appropriating black pain, and therefore you're undermining the black suffering that these people have been through, and so therefore you're also racist, and by the very fact that you have white skin, you are guilty of white privilege and whiteness. You are reinforcing the systems of oppression that are inherent in the white identity. So basically, if you take offense to these racist people attacking you as being white, or if you don't take offense to these racist people attacking you as being white, or even if you're racist against yourself and you're white, you're still guilty of being racist. So it's a circular, absurd argument.
Yeah, the quintessential, it's quintessential Marxism. Only white people can be racist because we're the bourgeois, and everyone else is the proletariat. We are the oppressors; they are the oppressed. If you get outside that paradigm, then you don't fit, and they won't accept it. It's almost like a bizarre religious cult. That's their doctrine, and you can't face reality. You got to face what they say. Okay, you were talking about farm murders. I actually did a story earlier today about a 54-year-old man. He was from the Netherlands in South Africa. I can't remember what town he was in, but apparently he had migrated, I don't know why, migrated from the Netherlands to South Africa, owned a farm, and 5 black thugs wearing what I call ninja outfits. You may have heard the story, but they broke into his home, they tied up his wife and somebody else, and they took this guy upstairs and tortured him for 5 hours. And then they stabbed him to death. And I guess they made off with her safe or whatever. But the problem is, Jack, people don't understand how common that is in South Africa. But yet you've got this I don't know what you call this big fat person with the F white people all over, but they don't consider that racism. You can slaughter white people wholesale, and they can't even defend themselves. But you know what's going on down there?
Yeah, it's it makes me sick to my stomach. Some of the things that I've read, and you know, you Google it on the internet, and it's frankly, it's heartbreaking. It's really heartbreaking, and you know, all I can do is just absolutely, my heart goes out to those families that have had to endure through this, and all I can say is that this can't continue, and if we carry on going down this road, there are people that they've had enough. And, you know, yeah, it's just enough is enough.
So in the Cape Republic, let's say it happens. You've got a Cape Republic, you are the president or prime minister, whatever structure you have. What is going to be your policy to protect white farm, or any farmer for that matter, but most of them are white farmers from these type of attacks? What kind of policy will be in place there?
Okay, first of all, I wouldn't be president of the Cape Republic because that's not how the system works in Switzerland. What we would have is we would have a presidential council. They've got a presidential council of 7. We would probably start off with something like that also. And so the president rotates on an annual basis,
I
and you
see.
get a fair representation of every community within your society. So I but I get your question. As the presidential body of the Cape Republic, what we would do is we would, first of all, just like every solution is best solved by the local community. And we would put systems in place that would allow those communities, those farming communities, to defend themselves. And as historically has already seen, there was a group called the Commandos that were armed, that were well trained, that were paid for by the farming communities, and they ensured that the farms were safe. And quite simply, by reintroducing that system, I think we would see a rapid decline in these types of horrific murders.
Cool. So your position on gun control is let people defend themselves. Is that correct?
Absolutely. There is no power that a government should have over its citizens, that its citizens itself should not have to be able to defend themselves against that government too.
Okay. I know you don't like to pinhole yourself politically, but would you consider yourself libertarian? Maybe.
I think there's a problem in identifying with one certain political ideology. I
Okay.
think that if you simply look at policies, there's a reason why Switzerland is so effective in having managed through 2 world wars, where you have Germans, French, Italians, and Romansk all living together in one country, whereas across the borders in neighboring countries, you had Germans and French and Italians slaughtering each other. Yet in Switzerland, they managed to navigate through those types of problems. And in Singapore, where you have a very low taxation system, the government doesn't get in the way with red tape and bureaucracy and things like that, then these are countries that work. And I think the key is to get the government out of the way and allow businessmen to be businessmen, entrepreneurs to come up with new ideas to build an economy. Let's not think that a few gray-suited politicians are going to solve first of all, understand the issues of local communities better than the communities themselves. And at the end of the day, it's the communities that put the government in power. It's their taxes, it's their votes. And at the end of the day, that's where the power should remain.
Okay, we're down to about a little less than 3 minutes, so let's go back and revisit what we talked about initially, and that is number one, what are the prospects of this actually happening? And number two is what is the road to success? How are you going to get there? If you could summarize that in about 2 minutes, how would you put that together?
Okay, sure. As we said before, if you look at the trajectory of the country right now, we're heading in one direction, and that's downhill and downhill fast. And if you look at where Zimbabwe got to after a few years when they started down that slippery slope, things can get pretty bad pretty quick. And if you look at the various forces at play in South Africa, I don't think we will. I don't think we will allow it to get to that point. Rather, what we'll see is we'll see fissuring along the provincial lines. And so I think it's not just likely that the Cape Party will succeed, but I think it's inevitable. And Cape independence will happen. We hope it will happen sooner while the country is still stable. But we think certainly if the ANC keeps on heading driving the country towards the direction that we're going in, then Cape independence is an absolute inevitability. What is our roadmap to getting there? Well, basically, being a grassroots political organization, we need people within their communities to take responsibility for themselves. We need the regions around the Cape to start Cape Party branches, to expand, to talk to people, to spread the vision, spread the message. And obviously, at the end of the day, elections and campaigning, it costs money, it takes time, we need resources. So if people would please go to the capeparty.com website, they can send us donations and support us through our banking details. We are going to introduce cryptocurrencies too soon, so they can send us Bitcoins and things like that. And just basically, yeah, support us, help us, spread the vision, spread the message, and let's do this together.
Okay, we're talking to Jack Miller with the Cape Party, capeparty.com. Now, are you the president and chairman of the party?
That's correct.
I should have asked you that at the very beginning. Blame on me for not doing that. But Jack,
don't worry, presidents won't matter in the Cape Republic. It's about the people.
Yeah, cool. Okay, it's capeparty.com. Any other contact information, because they can access social media, and I'm assuming phone numbers from the website just by clicking on connect. But any other information you want to pass out before we
yeah, they can contact us at capeparty.com. So yeah, by email is probably the best way to get hold of us. And yeah, we look forward to hearing from you.
Okay, well, Jack, thank you so very much for taking an hour of your time and talking with us, and let's do it again.
Thank you very much, Ken. It was a great pleasure.